Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family.
I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Box Office Bingers. This episode, it's going to be a special one. I can already feel it. And I say that is because I think we are reviewing a very special movie this week. Ernesto, tell the listeners what movie we are talking about this week.
Oh, we've got Dreamworks Animation's The Wild Robot, based on the book series from the author Peter Brown, starring Lupita Nyong'o, Pedro Pascal, Kit Connor, Bill Nye, Stephanie Hsu, Mark Hamill, and Catherine O'Hara, written and directed by Chris Sanders. And if that name sounds familiar, he directed a little movie called Lilo and Stitch, and How to Train Your Dragon, and The Croods. So it's safe to say that this man has earned his right at DreamWorks. He makes some pretty great animated features.
Not only that, he's earned his name at Disney too. I mean, Lilo and Stitch is a classic.
Absolutely.
I mean, Stitch as a character, he is shown everywhere around the parks. His merch is literally seen everywhere. I mean, as much as you see Mickey Mouse, you see Stitch there, and that was an original idea. And fun fact about Chris Sanders, which I'm sure he is collecting those residuals quite nicely, is that he is the voice of Stitch.
I actually did not know that.
Yes. And so he is still collecting that money because he is going to be the voice of Stitch in the live action movie coming out next year as well. So he is just on his way of doing great things. It's so funny because I remember we had a couple weeks ago, we had talked about D23 and all the news that came out of that. And when this movie came out, I was like, Chris Sanders, why do I feel like I wrote that name down or I had read that name somewhat recently? And then obviously went down the rabbit hole and I found like, oh my God, he is the voice of Stitch as well as the writer and the director. And then he moved over to DreamWorks after his work in Disney. And then he co-directed How to Train Your Dragon. I was like, my God, this guy is a genius. It takes a minute for him to make a movie because they're all animated. So that takes a while. But man, when he comes out with a movie, it's something.
I mean, those are all classics. And I feel like we're going to have a very similar conversation when it comes to The Wild Robot.
Oh my God, this movie was getting high praise already before the movie came out. I did not know it was based off of a book series. Ernesto was like, "You reading the book?" And I'm like, "No," and you're like, "You should," and I was like, "Fine." So we're gonna be talking a little bit about the book as well, and it's a quick 4-hour read if you're listening to an Audible. It was very breezy, very very breezy book.
Ooh, breezy.
So breezy. Oh yes, fun, wild. Anyway, but yeah, so talking about The Wild Robot, talking a little bit about the book, we also got so much going on before we even get to the movie. We're going to be talking about some entertainment news. We're going to be continuing our weekly binge on Agatha All Along. We're going to be talking about episode 3 as well as The Penguin, talking about episode 2. But before we get into that, we're going to be getting into some experiences that we've had. So we're skipping what you're watching, but instead, Ernesto, let's talk about Halloween Horror Nights. And you just recently went with the fam, so how was that?
As I told, this is something we've definitely been looking forward to this year. So we finally got to go to Halloween Horror Nights this year. And so there's 10 houses. We technically went to 8 houses. So the only reason I say that is because the Monsters of Latin America, we went to it and most of our group went, but me, my wife, and my son, we made an active choice to not go into it because I've heard, I guess, some of the themes are very heavily on like a baby being murdered and like a miscarriage and like a miscarriage scene. So we just made a choice, based off our history. We're just like, maybe we're just gonna skip that house. But I count it only because we literally walked over there, dropped our party off, and waited for them to get off. So we waited with them. We did other stuff, but we made a choice to not go into it. So I technically count it. So out of 8 and 10, but the only two we actually didn't get to was right here, Quiet Place and Ghostbusters. And the only reason I skipped Quiet Place is because I did not hear good things about this house. What was your experience with this house?
So I do have an involvement with some of the installation of Halloween Horror Nights. That's part of my job. So it is really cool to be involved on such a popular event like this. So I feel like me talking about these houses come from a different experience because I'm involved in part of the magic, behind the curtain, so to speak. I've also documented these houses when no one else is in there. I'm in there with the lights on, so I have a very different experience. But as far as what everyone else sees, involving, as a viewer, as a person who is paying to go to this event, I really like A Quiet Place. The puppetry here is actually fantastic. The monsters that you see there looks straight out of the movie. A Quiet Place takes place within movies 1 and 2, so you'll get scenes. Majority of the scenes you see is from the first movie, and then the last 3 or 4 scenes are from the second movie. And so I think what they do with the puppetry of it all, I think it looks great. Okay. And there's no music that is in this house like you might hear in other houses. This is solely, it's a quiet place, so you just hear a lot of ambient noises and also the screeching from the death angels. So I think it's a fun house, and even with all these houses that are related to IPs, it's just fun to see scenes from movies kind of recreated come to life in a unique way that Halloween Horror Nights is known to do.
Yeah, so the only other one we missed was Ghostbusters, and that's just really for time. And realistically, we could have done it, but we were just so damn tired. It was 1:30 in the morning. We can, eyes barely open. We can make one more house. It's no, it's time. It's time to go.
It's time to leave.
It's time to go. Let's see.
I would say, retaining the Ghostbusters, I really enjoyed that house. It's like this year's fun house. It's not really meant to scare you, but it's here to hey, remember this scene from the movie? Remember Slimer? Remember the Ecto? Remember the Ghostbusters? Garaka? No, that's okay. No, remember?
Remember the Frozen Empire you didn't see in the movie?
Well, there's one scene that's frozen. There's a really cool scene in the house that my team really worked really hard on, and it's the firehouse scene. So anyone who has gone to Halloween Horror Nights and you see the firehouse, we had a hand in making that a reality. So I have personal ties to it. There's also a lot of fun Easter eggs from other movies that the creators kind of, and the art designers and the creative people put into these houses. So it's a cool looking house. I wouldn't necessarily say it's scary. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite, but it's just a fun house to go through to kind of see, again, all these things come to life. As opposed to A Quiet Place, where I do feel like there are some scenes that are scary because there are some rooms that are just pitch black. And then all of a sudden you see the monster death angel come out. And there's also a really cool scene that takes place toward the end of the house, as well as the ending of A Quiet Place Part 2, where you get 3 scenes kind of put into one. So you're kind of getting a whole bunch of stuff happening all at once, which is kind of cool as well. But yeah, now for the houses that you have been to, what are those experiences for you?
So let's start with Insidious. This is my number 2 favorite house, actually.
Insidious. Okay.
Insidious is my number 2 favorite one. It is great. I mean, some of the jump scares they put out at you, the production design, it's just, there's so much to appreciate within that house. What I love is some of the rooms where it's mannequins and dolls, and you're not sure who's the real person. Oh my gosh, I was freaking that got me every time. There was another one where it looks like some of the scare actors were dressed as the wallpaper or the background, and then they would come out at you. There was one of them. He saw me. He went back to the wall, and then his eyes literally followed me as I exited the room, and his eye was like at the corner of his head. I was like, his eyeball's gonna roll into the back of his brain. Like, I just thought it was really well done. It was like truly like like the jump scares where they there was a lot of great misdirection where they have you focus on one thing and then you lose focus on something else that they're setting you up for something else. So I loved the setup that they had in it. I was really, really impressed. It was the one that I waited the longest for, and when we walked out of the house, I go, that was 100% well worth the hour wait. And actually the wait time said 80 minutes and it really ended up only being like 60 minutes.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite house out of all of them, and it's funny because as part of my involvement in it, I had the least involvement in there, so I had the biggest surprise out of all of them when this one actually felt like it's like, Insidious. So we're not in here that often. Okay, all right, let's go in here and see what's up. And then let me tell you, Ernesto, when I first went through that house, it's been a long time since a house actually, like, I felt unsettled.
Yes, that's a great description.
It is, yes, it is scary. It is, but I feel like it's less scary, more it builds up intensity as well as I'm like I said, feeling unsettled when I'm walking to that house because I really don't know, like it's an eerie vibe to it, and it's like I don't feel comfortable. And then the scare happens. So like I'm already feeling not okay, and then there's a scare on top of that gets you. There are some houses where it's just like, okay, like you're just kind of enjoying the vibe. It's a good time. This looks spooky, but in Insidious, it's like, oh my god, you feel comfortable? I don't feel comfortable right now. This is not. I'm not okay right now. And like to the point where there are the mannequin scenes, but there is this other scene with the nuns. And it is pitch black. And they do a lot of really cool effects in there. And when I was walking through it, there was one person that was telling me that there was a nun right behind me that I had no idea was there. It did not scare me. I was focused on the other nun that was in the other side of the room. And they still scared me, even though I was kind of watching them in the pitch black. But little did I know there was another nun that was literally like could have been breathing down my neck, and I had no idea that was happening. And I wish they did not tell me that was happening, because that freaks me out even more that I had no idea that was behind me. So this house is terrifying.
Yes, really well. I felt like it was really well done.
Yes.
So that we moved to Monsters: Eternal Bloodlines. It was fine. Like, I mean, there's a couple of jump scares, there's a couple of good moments, but like overall, like I don't want to say forgettable, but there's not like I can't pick out a couple of moments like, oh, this really got me. I mean, I thought it was really cool to see the Wolfman because I remember seeing early photos and it was like this weird hybrid thing that they were showcasing. I think it was for Horror Nights in Hollywood. And they had a scare actor out there, and it was the actual one from the movie, and it looked all, you know what I'm talking about? It looked awful.
Okay, all right. So I think you're mixing the two. So Universal had a kind of a marquee, a stand-in that was advertising for the Wolfman movie from Blumhouse that comes out in January next year in January, and so this was the first time that any type of visual representation of the movie, this was before a poster, before a trailer. We knew very little about what the Wolfman was going to be. We just knew that it was a project from Blumhouse that was coming out next year. And so people saw the marquee and was like, oh, okay, this is the first visual aid that we get to see for this movie. Makes sense. Universal, Halloween Horror Nights promoting their new movie, makes sense. And then there was an actor that came out that a lot of people completely dismissed as soon as it came out. Not look at the Wolfman at all. It looked like an old man.
Yes.
That was the Wolfman. And then he was wearing like a lumberjack outfit. A lot of people criticized it like hard on that. And then they quickly took away the marquee almost like a day or two after the character came out. And now it's no longer the Wolfman marquee. And it was already getting negative press before the trailer or a poster or anything came out for the movie. So they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. So that was probably what you saw online. That has nothing to do with the internal
okay.
Bloodlines house that does feature a wolf person, because I think a lot of the people of the story's hard to follow in Eternal Bloodlines, but the gist of it was that the Van Helsing's daughter teams up with Lady Frankenstein, so I guess the bride of Frankenstein, and they are going after some sort of Dracula that killed her father, Van Helsing, as well as her brother as well. Or maybe just her brother. I'm not entirely sure of the timeline. So like they're teaming up to kill this vampire that killed part of his family, that killed part of her family. And it also involved, you saw the mummy in there, and I think that was part of the storyline, was that she needed to get the amulet from the mummy, and then also something from this wolf person, because you also see a wolf person kind of lunge out to the people at Horror Nights. So yeah, there was I feel like I know what the story is, but I feel like not a lot of people might get the same you will know that same storyline. It's a little bit harder to follow if you're just walking through the house.
See, I was under the impression that Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines was like them promoting the Universal Monsters. You know, like Frankenstein and all them, and Mummy and all that.
So for the past couple of years, they've been trying to create original stories with the Universal Monsters branding. So last year or 2 years ago, it was like a story with Dracula, Wolfman, and the Mummy. Last year, they were featuring some of the lesser known characters. So you had like Phantom of the Opera and Invisible Man and Heckle and Jide and the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Thank you. You had. So they were featuring those characters, and so this is all from Universal Creative creating these original stories based off the Universal Monsters branding.
Okay. Well, I mean, overall, it was fine.
Fine, yeah.
So then we moved to, Monstrous. I told you we skipped. What was your experience with this house?
I actually really enjoyed Monstrous. There was basically you're going down these East of Monsters of Latin America. So you follow one specific monster and it takes course of 2 or 3 scenes, and then they highlight another popular Latin American monster, and then you see that monster terrorizing the city. The scene that you were referring to earlier, yes, there is a monster that is known for eating children, and so you do see that in the house. And so that's why there's probably a warning for people who are sensitive to that to maybe not do it. So that was the first thing you see in the house.
Okay.
And then you follow other popular Latin American monsters throughout the house as well. So it's almost like you're getting these little vignettes throughout through each scene. 'Cause I think they highlight about 4 or 5 monsters. And there's one really cool animatronic in there. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I remember seeing it. I was like, this is the coolest thing. This was actually a house that was used in Hollywood first, and then they brought most of the pieces over to one for Orlando, and because it was very popular over in Hollywood. And there's a really cool puppet that I had that's really fun, and there's a really cool animatronic in there that's also really cool. So I do actually enjoy this house very much.
Okay, so now we move to this is actually my favorite house, which is Slaughterhouse Cinema 2. I just thought it was really fun, really engaging. I mean, I love how every room is a setup to the movie you're about to enter. The mummy stripper. It was really funny when we were walking through. She tried to get me and my wife. She looked at us and pointed for us to come to her. You see this massive shark getting launched towards you. I mean, I thought it was crazy. It's we're walking through and it's pitch black. And all of a sudden, you see this big monster thing coming at you. You're like, oh, who's controlling that thing? Where's he gonna stop? But I just thought it was really well done. And I'm a sucker for movies, so just going through that and seeing that put together as a house, I thought was really well done.
Yeah, Slaughter Cinema 2 is a sequel to a house they did a couple years ago. This house is just a lot of fun. It's basically highlighting B movies. These are all original movies that the creative team came up with, and it just highlighting it's like you're walking into a drive-in movie theater, and you walk into like these B-level horror movies, and it's just a good time because each room is like a movie. So literally, you're like, it's very quick. So you get to see something new literally in every room, and you're not trying to follow a story, but you're just kind of having fun with the whatever movie poster they highlight, and then you get to see like one or two scenes from that. And if you are, for people who are there at night, and there's actually a projector outside of the drive-in movie theater, the facade, and they're actually playing the trailers that you're going to see in the house.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't know that.
So. Yeah, if you're there during the day, obviously you're not going to be able to see it because, there's still daylight. But once it's night, you will see, like, the movie trailers that you will be experiencing inside the house. That's really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Hold on. I'm going to give you 1 second. I said this might happen. My AC's broken, and I have to handle that. So I'll be right back.
All right, so we're going to take a pause. See you guys in a second. And we're back.
Yeah.
So that
might happen again.
Might happen again, but
it might happen again. We don't know. But anyway, back to museum. The next house.
The beauty of life to tape. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, pretty much. That is life. Of having AC issues.
Yeah,
so
especially in Florida.
We're trying to resolve that while also keeping our recording schedule intact. So the beauty of life here. So we might have to cut out again. If you see I gotta go for AC, then we're just gonna do this again. Anyway, moving on.
Okay. The museum deadly exhibits. This is probably where on the lower end for me. I really enjoyed the house, but I mean, in comparison to the others, it tends to be on the lower. It was fine. It was fun, but there's nothing that now a couple of the houses I can think back and like still having memorable experiences. This one was like very vague to me.
Yeah, I really don't have much to say about this house either. It's kind of the lower end of my favorites. The story doesn't really, it doesn't resonate with you that much. There's not a lot of memorable things happening there. Basically, it's like, think of it as not a museum, but deadly.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah, nothing really sticks out, so unfortunately it kind of is on the bottom list there.
This other one, Major Sweets Candy Factory, I actually really enjoyed. I thought this was a really fun house. I liked the lead up because you're going through the Fast and the Furious queue, so it feels like you're kind of going into that factory feeling. And I don't remember if right before you go into the house or as you're into the house, you actually start to smell candy. Like you actually they actually start to pump the smell to you. I mean, seeing the little demonic child actors, I thought they were fantastic. I mean, I thought the scare actors for me were on point on this one. I mean, just all the different kill scenes. The woman who's doing like the checking in the front, she like waved her long nails right in my face. She like literally stopped right in front of me. She was like, "Hey!" and scared the shit out of me. And then you see her later on in the house with the chainsaw, which she also came after me. So that was fun. But yeah, it was good. I liked it.
This house is a lot of fun. For those who don't know, this is also a lot. Every now and then, the creative team will kind of like think of an idea, and it'll be in a scare zone. And if it does well and it's popular, then it gets its own house. So about 2 or 3 years ago, Major Sweets was its own scare zone, and the idea was that think of it like Willy Wonka or Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, where the town area is kind of run by a chocolate factory, but this time when the newest candy is put out to the masses on Halloween, and it was during a parade, at least the scare zone anyway, it was during a parade, so you saw these big old parade floats on the streets, and then the kids eat the candy, and then they start having a reaction, and then start killing everybody.
Yeah.
And then that's the story. So the Major Sweets Candy Factory is actually a prequel to the Scare Zone, and so you kind of see the kind of you see the kids going on a field trip to the candy factory, and you kind of see how all this kind of started in a way. So you do see a lot of cool visual stuff in there, and just kind of going into like this rusty, dirty factory that's supposed to be developing candy. It's a fun concept, and so I think that they also did a really good job with it. And this kind of like in the mid tier for me. But I also really enjoyed.
One that's kind of on the lower end for me was Goblin's Feast. Like, it was fun. It was fine, but you just kind of walk through. Goblins are having a party. They kind of come at you. I think there's one point where they it's like on a clothesline where they launch a body out like down a hallway and it hits like right where the line is. Am I remembering that correct? You know what I'm talking about? I thought, to me, that's like the most memorable part. Because I saw him come, we were coming around the corner and I saw him coming, and I'm usually in the front. So then I slowed down so that everybody else could get hit by him. Yeah, my son loves when I do that. Not really. He gets very upset. He's like, Dad, why are you slowing down? It's like, this is what I paid for them to scare the shit out of you. So this is what we're here to do.
Goblin's Feast is actually my third favorite.
Okay.
I have a lot of fun with this one. It's just mainly because like it's like a fun concept in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's like nothing's really scary about it, but I think it's like another fun house.
Yeah.
That like, look at these goblins. They're hosting us, but they're also planned to eat us. So they're like, come in. Again, hello to the Goblin's Feast. Welcome to the party. We're gonna eat you at the end of it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have fun.
As long as we're having fun.
As long as you're having fun. I like the theming around it too. So yeah, I can understand why it may not be your favorite, but I have a good time walking.
It's not that it's not my favorite. It's just like, it was fine. It was fun. It was a fun house. It was like one of the first ones we did. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think this one's probably my number 3 is the Triplets of Terror. I thought that another really, really well done house. I thought the production design was done really well. I actually felt like I really got the story going in. These triplets, they kill their family. And I think this is the house where one of them comes out and they stab somebody on the couch and then it sprays on you. Yes. Is that house? Yes. So we got sprayed with water or whatever the hell, or the blood liquid that is supposed to be. Another one. I thought it was really fun. Like, we had a lot of fun. But I would have to say my favorite was. Oh, do you have anything on this one?
Yeah, actually, this is my least favorite house.
Oh, okay.
It's funny that you said that. I feel like there wasn't a lot going on here. The Triplets of Terror, Universal Halloween Horror Nights is celebrating 33 years. So it's the triplets, 33. The house, actually, the house number is actually 3324. The year 24, the year, number 33.
Yeah.
A lot of 3 motifs in there. I personally feel like the story was a little bit hard to follow because you're like, the first scene is supposed to be something that happened in the past, and then every 33 years or something like that, you'll see like the second room is actually supposed to be a podcast room. And so, like, now you're listening through a murder podcast of the events that are happening, but the room is so quick that you might not be able to receive that. And then the room that follows afterward is like present day, and you're seeing these, what they were children in the first scene they're now adults, and they go back and they commit these murders. And toward the end, the police and everybody are looking for them. So, like, I feel like it's a little bit hard to follow, and compared to other stuff out there, like, it's just like, people with masks. And they have like a weapon of choice, and I feel like it wasn't as like cool as like, say, watching a goblin feast happening or watching a candy factory. And to me, it's just like a house.
Okay.
And so like I wasn't as like wowed about it as some of the other houses.
I get that. So as far as houses, that's kind of like my breakdown. But I will say my favorite was the Blumhouse Scare Zone. I took a little video. You get the music. I mean, just the theming of it is great. Look, you get Ethan Hawke's character from the Black Phone. Oh my God. Yeah. So, I mean, I love that setup they have there. And the actress that they have for Megan there. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, she's really good. I mean, they both are.
That is incredible. And even throughout the Scare Zone, I mean, the lighting, there's just so much to appreciate here. This is our family here. They're scaredly walking through.
Like, can we walk a little bit faster, please? We don't need this to be here. That's actually really funny. And
then my favorite part is right here. I guess she caught what I was doing, and she just kind of played it to the video a little bit.
Yeah.
We just had a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously these are all recognizable characters from the Blumhouse universe. I was actually quite surprised we did not get a house from Megan this year.
Yeah.
I was almost thought it was going to be a shoo-in. Maybe they're going to try it next year because Megan 2.0 is coming out. So maybe that's the vibe. But yeah, I guess Blumhouse this year got a scare zone. Typically they get a house, but this year they got a scare zone. So so at least they're still represented, and you still got to see those characters from all these like classic horror movies that Blumhouse is known for. But it sounds like you had a good time overall.
Oh, it was fantastic. We had a fantastic time. We're gonna try to go one more time. Maybe just me and the wife, but we have to see it logistically if we can get a sitter. So we'll see if that works out.
Yeah, I mean, Halloween Horror Nights is such a staple here in Orlando, and if you can at least go for one night, I think it's worth the price of admission. There you have the 10 houses, you have the 5 scare zones, you have the show, you have a lot of fun food and drinks you can try. It's really just a fun night of spookiness. And so, yeah, I always have myself. I mean, over the years, I've been going as a guest, and now I start working there, and now I'm involved with it, so I get a different experience. But I always like to go back as a guest because I like to just see how the people are reacting to some of the hard work we do over the past year. And I think it's something special that we're able to make this like a year-round turnaround.
Yeah.
And have basically a complete new experience than what would have you got last year, and so it's always a fun time to experience.
I think Horror Nights. We've been going since like my wife and I've been dating, we've been going for so long. But I will say what was really nice. This is the first year we were able to like get a hotel and like actually stay on property and not have to drive home. And let me tell you, what an added bonus that is. Like that really sealed the deal. We stayed at the Endless Summer Resort. It was a beautiful resort. Beautiful hotel. The rooms are really nice. The pool is really we had a great time. We had an absolute great time.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, you know how long HHN days are, especially for people who like, all right, we're doing the stay and scream, we're opening the park, we're opening the event, we're closing the event, we're getting the most out of everything. And it's to say that it's a long day's understatement. You are beat by the end of the day, for sure.
I think from Horror Nights alone, we clocked somewhere between 15 and 20,000 steps.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's good exercise. Good exercise.
That's a word for it.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, that's our experience. That's our kind of review on Halloween Horror Nights this year. It wasn't really planned to be a review, but here we are. Just talking about it. But all right, let's dive into some of the news. And DC, I mean, come on. They have taken over this week's news. I didn't expect to get this much news, but hey, we're ramping up.
We're getting ready.
And James Gunn is like, hey, we're getting ready for something special. We're going to kick off with something that happened that kind of hit us last week, which was Kyle Chandler, best known for his Emmy-winning performance as Eric Tyler in Friday Night Lights, is in talks to play Hal Jordan / Green Lantern in the upcoming Lanterns HBO TV series. Josh Brolin was actually offered the role of Hal Jordan before ultimately passing. He actually made a comment on that, saying it just wasn't going to work out, and he's happy for Kyle Chandler getting the role. Kyle Chandler is now the second Green Lantern to be cast in the DCU after Nathan Fillion was cast as Guy Gardner Green Lantern in the upcoming Superman film. As previously reported, the series follows new recruits John Stewart and Lantern legend Hal Jordan, 2 intergalactic cops and members of the Green Lantern Corps who are drawn into a dark Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. No word yet on who will play John Stewart, but the leading rumors suggest that Aaron Pierce, who played Malcolm X in the Genius miniseries over on Hulu, and Stephen James from If Beale Street Could Talk are top choices for the role. So, Ernesto, we're getting some casting news on Lanterns. Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm excited. I mean, even from the creative, we talked when they announced the creative team, and just the more news we get, the more excited I am. I think it's going to be, I have very high hopes, especially seeing, like, I know they're not it's not their production, but they are involved. DC Studios with the Penguin, with the success of DC Studios putting out the Penguin, I mean, they showed that they're able to put out different style of television. I mean, we're basically getting the Penguin as the Sopranos. That's like the best comparison.
Yeah, pretty much what this is. Yeah.
So just given that, I mean, I love Kyle Chandler. I think he's a fantastic actor. I'm excited. This is just more great news coming from DC. Like, people don't know. Like, I think like DC's about to change the game when they start releasing all their content.
So far, I mean, we haven't really heard anything bad after news, you know, casting after project announcement. So far, we haven't heard anything overly like, oh, this is an interesting choice. It's like, no, these are all like, all right, these are all interesting choices that I'm excited for. I'm also happy for Kyle Chandler. I know he's been around for a while, and obviously with the success of Friday Night Lights, but now he's in a superhero role. That's a whole different ballgame. We know when people get a superhero role, this could be life-changing, and then all of a sudden we're going to see Kyle Chandler everywhere if the Lantern show ends up being a success. I mean, not a superhero, but look at Pedro Pascal. He's been around, but all of a sudden he's the Mandalorian, and now he's all over the place. The Last of Us, now he's Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four movie, so like we saw him everywhere. And so I feel like if Lanterns is good, we might be seeing Kyle Chandler get a resurgence. Kyle Chandler get a resurgence in his acting career, and I'm excited for it. I always like him in the project that I've seen him in. I think he'll be a great older Green Lantern, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to him being going into that role. Now we move on to some very, very exciting news.
I will also say this is very unexpected news. I did not like this came from James Gunn himself.
Yeah, I absolutely was not. I don't think anybody was expecting this piece of news. James Gunn, co-CEO of DC Studios, took to social media to announce that the newest film greenlit for theaters from DC Studios will be a joint project with Warner Brothers Animation. The film will be titled Dynamic Duo and tells the origin story of two Robins, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Dynamic Duo will be directed by Arthur Mintz, who's making the film with his new animation studio, Swaybox, and will be a mix of animation, puppetry, CGI, and live action. DC Studios co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran will serve as producers, as well as the Batman director Matt Reeves under his Sixth and Idaho production company. Dynamic Duo will not be connected to the Matt Reeves Batman universe. We're talking main canon. We're thinking this is going to be part of the main, just like Creature Commandos is going to be an animated series, but it's considered part of the main DCU canon, and I think this will be too. I think it's really interesting because you're going to have you can't tell the origins of these two characters without also talking about Batman. So I wonder what involvement he's going to be in, and so does that mean we're going to get Batman in this movie in some sort of form, or are they going to talk around him being Batman? Like, they're going to talk about him, but he's not going to be in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with this article, with this particular piece of news. One, DC Studios is actually giving us a Robin origin story, like two Robins. Now they're like, hey, I know we've been out of the Robin game for a little bit, so we're gonna be giving you the origin story of not one but two Robins. Also, we know that there's a Batman movie in the works that is going to be directed by the Flash director. I forgot his name, but I know that he's directing it. That's the only piece of news we've gotten out of the Batman, the Brave, and the Bold. And we also know is going to be following a young Robin, which I just don't know if they've ever announced which Robin they're going to be focusing on.
Well, based on the cover, the cover that they showed when he released all that information, it's like... it's when Dick Grayson takes over as Batman, and it's also Damian Wayne is involved as well.
Okay,
and he's his Robin. So you're pretty far into the Batman lore at that point. But as far as this, I wonder if you're gonna tell the origins, are you gonna talk about how Jason Todd no longer becomes Robin? Like, are they going to do Death of the Family? Are they going to talk about him becoming the Red Hood? Like, there's so much to unpack from all these characters. Are they going to show Dick Grayson become Nightwing, or is he or like at some point, if you're going to introduce both of them, you can't talk about Jason Todd without talking about Dick Grayson leaving. So there's so much to unpack, and this is just going to be a film, right? So
Yeah. This
a lot.
is going to be a movie. This is going to be a movie that they're. So first of all, let's talk about Warner Brothers Animation, who for the last several years, for more than a decade, that I can count, probably even longer than that, maybe 15 years at this point, they have been coming out with bangers on the DC animated front
100%.
for years. And I think it's so special that James Gunn recognizes that they want to partner with them to make a movie that is not only animation, but is also live action, is also CGI, it's also puppetry. Like that's such a weird and such a unique thing to have all in one movie. And they're working with Warner Brothers Animation to collab with that, as well as they're putting faith in a new director starting his own company with Swaybox. Like, I feel like for me, this is DC Studios doing a big gamble out there. Like, this feels like we're working with a product, we're working with a studio that, you know, has been doing this for years. We're trusting a new production company to give us all of this. And they must have been talking a lot about how can they tell the origin stories of Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, and how does that fit with the DCU? And they decided that this was the way to do it. I don't know. This sounds really exciting for me. I can't wait to see some concept arts. I can't wait to see the first looks, the trailers, what this will look like. And it's also just very exciting because this is something we don't even get from Marvel right now. So, like, I know Marvel is slowly starting to dabble into the animation world. We see that with What If. We see that with X-Men 97, which have both been great shows. And we're about to see it again with my Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and another project that they announced that I forgot already. But, like, they're slowly getting into the animated world. But Warner Brothers Animation has been doing this for years. And so, yeah, a lot of like newness around this project that makes me so excited. And then continuing off of like James Gunn knows what he's doing, man. Like, not only to like what characters to focus on, but how to tell these stories in interesting ways. Like, it's just a pure excitement. And I can't wait to get started in the DC universe.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, you know, Creature Commandos, I believe that's
December 5th.
December 5th. So that's technically our first introduction, but Superman will be the first film as the introduction into the DCU. I mean, once December comes, we're gonna know. Everybody will know what's up with the DCU. So I'm very excited, and this next piece of news is also exciting.
Yeah, but one last thing with Dynamic Duo is that it's gonna be in theaters. Like, that Warner Brothers Animation DC project, I don't believe ever has made it to theaters.
No.
So this is they're putting them on the big stage. This isn't straight to digital. This isn't straight to streaming. This isn't like, oh, we'll pick it up on DVD at some point. No, this is going to be on the big screen for everyone to see. So they mean business. And again, just to hype up the excitement for it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't even begin to tell you how I'm excited for this one.
So this one is actually, I guess, some sort of a rumor. But according to the Hollywood Reporter, they're pretty certain that this is happening, yet we have not heard from James Gunn about this. Actually, this piece of news came out, and then a couple days later, James Gunn officially announced Dynamic Duo and did not mention this next project. But it's worth talking about nonetheless. So DC Studios is reportedly in early development of a team-up movie following the Batman villains Bane and Deathstroke. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the film is in the very early stages, with Captain America Brave New World writer Matthew Orton tapped to write the script. No actors or director has been attached to the project just yet, and like I said, it's unclear if or how it will fit within the DCU, as co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran have not confirmed the project is being in development. So, just putting that out there. But the idea of a Bane and Deathstroke movie, Ernesto, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Give me more of that, and that's only because I trust James Gunn. Like, he's already proven himself as a creative that he can handle massive comic book properties. He can handle ensembles. He can handle a lot of main characters and being able to mix them together. So I'm here for all of it. Like, he's making a lot of different creative choices when it comes to DC Studios, just like we talked about with the last story. So I think this is just more of the same. Like, what other villain team-up movies do we have?
Yeah, this one I'm a little bit unsure about to see if this is even warranted. But so far, I've been intrigued with every project that James Gunn has announced so far. And though this was not an official announcement, the idea of these two very popular DC villains coming up together for a DC team up or DC like team up, whatever they want to do, DC villain team up, is interesting to me. And obviously, we see a lot of like, is this going to be more of an anti-hero vibe? We're seeing a lot of focus on villains lately. Obviously, with the Penguin, we have Suicide Squad in the past. We have even Marvel dipping in it with even Agatha All Along right now. That's technically a Marvel villain. And we also have the Thunderbolts, which are kind of anti-heroes within the Marvel universe. So, like, we are focusing more on the villain side, and I'm not mad at it. But this project definitely has my interest. I'm not sure if I'm, like, fully invested into the idea just yet, especially since we haven't seen what the DCU Batman universe is going to look like just yet.
True. Well, and let's see if it even comes into fruition. Hopefully we get an official confirmation from the James Gunn. But until then, we can just hope.
Yes.
So in other like superhero news, I just thought it was really interesting. The U.S. Trademark Office Tribunal has canceled Marvel Comics and DC Comics. They have lost their trademark to the term superhero. This happened due to Marvel and DC failing to respond to court requests. This was from Super Babies Limited. This is a company that makes comics about super babies. They challenged their claim to own superhero. Basically, they didn't want to pay them the rights to use the term superhero. So they ended up, since they didn't respond, so now superhero is open to public domain, which I think that's kind of interesting. The Super Babies attorney Adam Adler of Reichman, Jorgensen, Lehman, and Feldberg said in a statement that the ruling was not just a win for our client, but a win for creativity and innovation. By establishing superhero, he said superheroes, but superhero placed in the public domain, we safeguard it as a symbol of heroism available to all storytellers. Although superheroes and supervillains, Marvel and DC still co-own. But I think this is so interesting that, like, now we're getting to this time in our life where all these things are starting to become open for everybody to repurpose into different things. We saw that recently with the whole Winnie the Pooh and Mickey and Steamboat Willie, where like now they're their own horror franchise because all those characters are now open to public domain. So I'm just curious to see what is gonna come out of this. How many other creators are gonna be able to come out of the woodworks now, knowing that they don't have to pay Marvel and DC for this one element that they want to use in their story.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, you feel like that superhero is such a universal term to describe heroism, like it says here. So you would think that word is not trademarked, but I guess it is. I didn't know that it was, and now Marvel and DC had lost that right. And I honestly think that's to the credits that not only win for our client, but a victory for creativity and innovation. Yeah, no, I agree with that, because the idea of like superheroism and superheroes in general has been as part of our society for so long now more than ever, that we were getting all these multiple projects, and now it's been in more than just comic books. It's in the movies now. It's in our normal vernacular of just saying the word superhero, not to have to worry about it being owned by somebody else. So I do think it's nice that you can actually use the word without having worrying about any legality, the legal. There you go. Legal troubles that can come with it. So, yeah, this is actually a good thing. Let people use the word. Let people write the word. Let people say the word superhero, because it's generic enough. We're not related specifically talking about anything specific, like specific superhero, or like saying Spider-Man. No, you're just saying it's a superhero. It's a generic term, and people can fill in the blanks from there. So
yeah, once again, not like really big news, but I just thought it was really interesting, just something to come up recently, especially where we're in the height of this, Marvel versus DC. So now what other company can come up and make their own MCU or make their own superhero universe to compete? So
Yeah, and also like you kind of wonder like there's all these other projects that came about that are also obviously superhero based, but not Marvel or DC. So you wonder every time they wanted to use it in a title or use
Yes.
it in dialogue, do they always have to pay Marvel and or DC to even use the word? Again, it's so universally known what a superhero is. It's kind of weird to say that this word was once trademarked by Marvel and DC. So yeah, this will definitely invoke creativity and innovation to now use the word freely because it already is a generic term anyway.
yeah, exactly. All right. Moving on, Michael B. Jordan is set to direct his second film and star in the Thomas Crown Affair remake for Amazon MGM Studios. This movie will be the third version of the classic romantic heist after the 1999 remake starring Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo, and the 1968 starring Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. A new draft will be written by The Fall Guy, Hobbs and Shaw, and Hotel Artemis screenwriter Drew Pearce. Though plot details are being kept under wraps, the previous iterations followed a very rich and successful playboy who amuses himself by stealing artwork, but may have met his match in a seductive detective. Sure, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting next movie for Michael B. Jordan to kind of dip his hands in. Obviously, he had his directorial debut with Creed 3, and we see him working again with Ryan Coogler in a new movie he's coming out next spring called Sinners.
Yeah, it looks good.
So it does look good. It looks interesting. And now we see him kind of doing this like romantic heist film, which is not a project I would think Michael B. Jordan would be doing next. So maybe he has a certain twist on it. Given the subject matter, I am curious to see, because I feel like you can say you're directing a next movie, but if you're doing a remake, and obviously we can see like this is a duo, so I wonder who is going to be his leading lady involved in this, because I feel like it is a pair that is associated with this title. So I'm curious to see in the pre-production phase who will be his leading lady and who will be seducing him when he's trying to do the heist. I'm assuming that he is the lead in this movie.
But I can see the writing being there, because I felt like part of what the Fall Guy, the best parts of it was the romantic interest that he wrote between Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling. To me, that's the best element of that movie. So that's interesting that having that kind of dynamic or style applied to this with what Michael B. Jordan has put out with Creed 3, I think it could be exciting. I think we are in for an exciting kind of movie, and both have an action that's kind of have that action background. So I think this will be an interesting blend on this film.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm not really familiar with the Thomas Crown Affair storyline, so maybe that's something
we'll have to check out. Worth looking into when we cross that bridge.
Yes, exactly. Which is probably for like 2 or 3 years from now. So
even so, something like this, like to now, that would be the first time we would be able to look at a movie, like look at the original, look at the remake, and then look at the remake of the remake of the remake. We're looking at the third remake of this film. Like, how does it hold up? Does it need to keep being remade?
It's a good point, because like you said, the original version was in 1968 and then it was remade in 1999. So now we're 25 years later for the announcement of this movie. So I guess I feel like this is Amazon taking advantage of their MGM. Now they've taken over MGM Studios. They're probably looking at all the properties that they have, and they're gonna give out, okay, what can we do? What can we be interested in? And, talking with Michael B. Jordan, which they also have a history with already, and seeing what they can work with. And, maybe they were able to come up with agreement, and maybe Michael B. Jordan has a good enough vision to now work with Drew Pearce on giving us maybe a new version of the Thomas Crown Affair.
And he's a fantastic creative. So I'm here for whatever Michael B. Jordan puts out. Same thing with him and Ryan, this project that him and Ryan Coogler have coming out next year as well. Yeah, like I'm all over it.
I am really excited. I really liked him in his directorial debut. I think it's an interesting choice for his next film to direct. I think it's also just nice to see him in the director's chair again.
I agree.
So that wasn't like a one-time deal. Like he wants to continue pursuing this. So that's also fun to see. And the last bit of news we have for you guys this week is Zootopia and Encanto writer-director Jared Bush is replacing Jennifer Lee as Chief Creative Officer of Walt Disney Animation Studios as Lee returns to filmmaking full-time to focus on being the writer-director of Frozen 3 and Frozen 4. Jennifer Lee has been chief creative officer for the past 6 years, serving as executive producer for Ralph Breaks the Internet, Raya and the Last Dragon, Encanto, Strange World, and Wish, in addition to being the writer-director of Frozen and Frozen 2 and a co-screenwriter of Wreck-It Ralph. Jared Bush takes his new role of Chief Creative Officer while currently wrapping up production as writer and director of Zootopia 2, which will be in theaters November 26, 2025. So I do find this interesting that, like, Jennifer Lee, she was, like I said, a co-writer, co-director on Frozen. That was her, like, well, first it was Wreck-It Ralph, and then it was her big hit with Frozen. And then in the midst of work going from Frozen to Frozen 2, then she, is given the title of Chief Creative Officer. And I wonder within these last 6 years, and now the company wanting to push for more Frozen sequels, and, like, I just find it interesting that, like, technically this is a bigger title, like Chief Creative Officer, but for some reason, and maybe this was a personal choice or maybe a choice by the studio, we won't know that answer, but like, hey, we want you to focus on making us $1 billion again, so let's put all your focus on Frozen 3 and 4 and not on some of the other animated projects we have coming down the pipeline. I just find that interesting. And then instead you bring on Jared Bush, who's also responsible for a $1 billion animated film with Zootopia, and basically has spent this time working on Zootopia 2 that comes out in 2025. So,
well, it makes sense because he's wrapping up, but he's winding down and she's ramping up. So it makes more sense for her to take a step back, because if they really want to do Frozen 3 and 4 right and end on a high note, like, it's better that she has sole creative focus on those things as opposed to also being the chief creative officer.
Yeah. And so I just found it interesting shifts, a couple of things that were happening behind the scenes going on at Disney. And also under her leadership as Chief Creative Officer, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Raya and the Last Dragon, Encanto, all great movies in my opinion.
I agree.
And, you didn't see Strange World. I was not a big fan of Strange World. And we both enjoyed Wish, but unfortunately, not a lot of people saw it in the box office and it was considered a flop. So I want to say, even though this is not necessarily her fault, I'm sure Disney's taken that under consideration, that, the last two movies that she was involved with were not financial successes.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think that's something to be in account as well. And also, it's unfortunately for her, she was also involved in the pandemic. So like Raya and the Last Dragon and Encanto were bought in more of a Disney Plus, movies that were coming out during the pandemic, not really given its time to shine on the big screen. Encanto was, but it was quickly put on Disney Plus like a month later. So I feel like she got dealt a bad hand once the pandemic happened under her role. But hey, if you want to put your focus on the franchise that you basically started, by all means, that makes sense to me.
Agreed.
But there you go. That's all the entertainment news we have for you guys this week. As always, you can find all the latest and greatest news on all the latest and breaking news. It's not greatest. I knew I was saying it wrong last week. So it's all the latest and breaking news over on our social media channels on Facebook at Box Office Bingers and our our Instagram and Threads page at boxoffice_bingers. We will post all the latest and breaking news over there first, and they'll come back in the show and we'll talk about it. So with that, like we said, we're going to be skipping What You're Watching, but instead we're putting our focus on some of our weekly binges. So this time around, we're going to kick off with Agatha All Along, episode 3. So Ernesto, kick it off.
Right. So episode 3, titled Through Many Miles of Tricks and Trials, directed by Rachel Goldberg. Directed by Rachel Goldberg and written by Cameron Squires. So we see that they reach the end of they're starting on the road. The coven, this is where they find out they're gonna be on different trials, and that each one has different branches of witchcraft, which we kind of already knew because each witch came in there having a different skill set. So it kind of was, we were already assumed that this was gonna happen.
Yeah, and I also really like that the episode titles are just the song lyrics.
Yes.
And so even I think now the lyrics even have more meaning to them because now each line is representing a certain aspect of each episode, which I think is a nice touch to kind of give, like the show was given a lot of thought. More so that when we, when we heard first this announcement, we were like, this show's it's not worth the spinoff from the success of WandaVision. And now each week we're slowly seeing that, they're putting a lot of effort into this that is making this a fun watch.
Well, because I just like that they're making it different. Like, it's just, like, it's not completely tied to the MCU. It's loosely in the universe. Like, you just, like, it's really connected to WandaVision. And even that, you don't even have to watch to appreciate this. To me, it reads like a comic book miniseries. Like, oh, you liked WandaVision? Oh, well, we wrote this little miniseries about Agatha, what happens to her right after. And you can read it and you can see what happens to her and how that makes a mini effect on the universe. So I'm liking that that we're on this trek now where we're reading like comic books. Like, you should be able to pick up any property and that should be a jump on point for you, and you should be able to mix and match and go really wherever you want to pick. But as we move on, they realize that the teen's sigil prevents any witch from learning his identity. So, nobody can say he can't even say his real name, or nobody can, like, I guess they can try to say it, so they just call him the teen. The coven ends up at this coastal house with a bottle of wine, but everybody but the teen drinks. But Agatha pours it out. Jen tells the teen not to trust Agatha because he says to her that that she has said to have traded her child for the Darkhold. And then once everybody started drinking, this counter appears and they realize that the wine is poison and everybody's got comically puffy faces. They actually look like they're kind of playing. To me, they were kind of playing off like the Real Housewives vibe, like the house, like, with all their Botox and injections. But then once that goes away, they need to go find the ingredients to find the antidote. Then the witches start hallucinating. Lilia, she sees a younger self, and from the Renaissance area, Jen sees that a doctor is trying to drown her underwater. Alice sees her mother about to commit suicide, and that Agatha is, the callback to her kid. She sees a crib containing the Darkhold. As they prepare the antidote, the house goes underwater, threatening to drown them. At the very last second, the oven opens up, and then it becomes a portal to get out. They all finish the antidote, drink it, and feed it to Sharon. They escape and back onto the road, and then the teen discovers that Sharon's dead. Yeah.
And that's kind of where we leave off in the episode. That's kind of like the oh shit moment. We go tune back next week to find out. I think this was like a little bit of a. I do like certain aspects of this episode. I feel like we were able to learn a little bit more about the characters. You also have, I think that the trials. It definitely feels now episodic, where the first two episodes are kicking off the journey, and then now I'm assuming the episodes that are going to follow for the next couple of weeks are going to be each them going down the road and having these challenges that they have to go through in order to get to the end of the road.
Yes.
Like they said before. And so I was watching a breakdown video, and it was describing that the outfits that they're wearing and the vibe was very similar to Big Little Lies. So
they mentioned that in the episode. They called it they called it some knockoff.
Huge Tiny
Lies. That's the same thing I thought. Oh, and also a side note. This is we're really starting to mention Mephisto. So, and they're mentioning him really heavily. So either this teen needs to be Mephisto, or he needs to be an agent of Mephisto, or Mephisto needs to come in the end and kill somebody, but he needs to show up. What would be great is if this show was it is Agatha's show, but if it would be a great long intro into us getting MCU's version of Mephisto.
Yeah. I always wondered when I heard the line, it's like Agents of Mephisto. I was like, okay, is this you just pandering to the audience at this point, or what? Because it was a big deal last year that everyone was theorizing it was Mephisto, and then it wasn't even close. Yeah. So the fact that they said it, I don't know if we're going to get anything out of it, but they said it now. So
we keep building up to it. His name has been mentioned so many times now. Like, it's going to be to a point where it's disrespectful if they don't show it.
But yeah, I feel like I did not have as much fun with this episode than I did with the premiere. But I like what we're going so far, and I do like that we're continuing to be its own thing, which is fun to watch, but also not losing on the like the TV based parodies, because I thought it was just going to be in the beginning, and that's where the parody ends. And that was like, okay, we're just kind of feeding off the ending of WandaVision, and because Agatha is still under Wanda's spell, but then once we get back, we're going to be focusing on the witch stuff. And it feels like they found a creative way to still feature parodies from popular TV shows, as well as continue on this witchcraft journey. And I think that's going to be the fun watch to do week after week, that I'm going to have a lot of fun with. And hopefully we get a good payoff on some of the mysteries that they've been building toward, especially with the Darkhold in the crib, insinuating that Agatha maybe traded her son for the access of the Darkhold. And so I'm looking forward to have this mystery unravel, get to know more about these characters, and seeing what other fun parodies that they can come up with each week on these episodes.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I'm very similar boat. It was fine. It was fun. It was a good episodic episode, but I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. I'm enjoying it. Like I'm not bored, but I'm not like overwhelmed. It's not like, oh, it's so amazing, but
yeah,
it's kind of somewhere in the middle. But it's fine.
Yeah, I'm entertained.
Yes, it's entertaining.
It's entertaining.
It's entertaining.
It's also, I think it's a perfect fit for the spooky season. Like I feel like this is a great Halloween watch. Like it's not really meant to scare you, but it gives you the vibe of Christmas. Not Christmas. It gives you the vibe of like Halloween season, and like it's kind of very like
very lighthearted.
I know it's very lighthearted Halloween fun.
Yeah.
That we're kind of experiencing because we are dealing with witchcraft, and maybe down the line we could maybe scare you, maybe attempt to, because the second episode you had like the scary Salem 7.
Yeah.
So there's that. Also, I think it's a nice touch that in order for them to exit down this first trial, they had to go into the oven, which was a nod to Hansel and Gretel, of them shoving like the witch into the oven and burning her. So they had to seek freedom through this trial through the oven. I thought that was a nice touch there. And I'm sure we're getting multiple of those witch kind of tie-ins moving forward, especially if you look at the end credit scene. There's so many of them there as well. So yeah, again, this is just entertaining. It's fun. I wasn't expecting to have a good time watching this, and I look forward to see what happens next.
Same here.
All right, so now we're going to be diving into our review on episode 2 of The Penguin, and things are getting interesting with Colin Farrell and the Penguin, and like the story is slowly building toward it. It definitely feels like The Sopranos. But yeah, I like episode 2.
Oh yeah, so episode 2, titled Inside Man, directed by Craig Zobel, written by Erica Johnson. So we start with Maroney being irate with us because for framing him for Alberto Falcone's murder, but he wants to continue their partnership because he's offering to help them with the Falcone drop shipment that is subsequently taken over by Maroney's crew. And this was a really interesting setup because this drop shipment he intended to not be on the FEMA truck. He intended to be in the car, kind of away from harm's way, but the boss's right-hand man, Johnny Vitti, I think his name is, told him that he needed to be on the truck. So now Penguin is faced with this decision of like, when shit goes down, do I have to kill the Falcones or am I going to have to kill the Maronis? Like, what am I? And then obviously we see that he decided to kill the Maronis because he decided to keep his allegiance with the Falcones in that scenario. What I thought was really interesting with this scene, I was watching the behind the scenes afterwards, and they were saying that instead of using like blanks, so what they actually did was put lights on the end of the guns for the actors to play off of, just to remove the fact of them putting live rounds in the gun, just to create a safer environment. And I think it worked. If they had told me that, I would have never have known. And then they were showing clips of it, and I go, "Oh, you can see it, like it like the flash, like when you pull the trigger, it flashes." And I'm assuming it would kick back or something, but like through the camera movements, you would never. To me, I didn't even notice a difference. If they had never told me that, I'd have never known. So I just thought that was a really interesting tidbit from that episode. So we see Carmine's brother Luca arrives to head the family. Meanwhile, Oz's mom Frances, we've kind of speculated first episode, but we see that she's suffering from dementia. Sophia's still suffering from PTSD from Alberto's death, and she's becoming like really unhinged. I mean, the opening scene of the show is her dreaming about her being in Arkham and her brother's death, and she wakes up, and we see that again later on in the episode where she's waking up from a nightmare and she's got all these scratches and blood underneath her fingernails. So she's obviously struggling. So she's convinced. Yeah. She obviously is convinced that someone in the crew is a mole from Maroni. So after Alberto's funeral, she goes to a retired GCPD officer who was formerly on the father's payroll to investigate the heist. Eventually, he kidnaps some guy named Ervad, one of the Maroni's henchmen who was in the hospital. He literally drives him to the house, he opens the trunk and goes, "Look, I brought you a gift." And this is a hospital patient who's all drugged out. He's like, "Here, get him downstairs, ask him some questions." But Maroni's wife tells Oz that he needs to retrieve Ervad before the Falcones can get him to talk, because he's going to have a lot to say about Oz. So he hatches this plot where he assigns Victor to plant evidence to frame the Falcone boss, Johnny Vitti, for Alberto's murder, while he reaches to Ervad to have him implicate Vitti. But Victor got scared when he was trying to plant the evidence, and he barely escapes. He tells Oz, so Oz has to quickly change tactics right at the last minute. So he ends up murdering Ervad with a switchblade, and once they find him, they call everybody to the main room, and he ends up planting the knife on Castillo, which is Sophia's henchman. And then this was a really interesting interaction, because this whole time you're seeing, Sophia wants to take ownership. She's in this male-dominated field. She's being run by all the men in her family, and she's given the justification to take out someone, and she's asking the henchman for the gun, and nobody's responding to her. Nobody responds to her, and it wasn't until Luca just pulls out the gun and shoots her. And I felt like that was such a power move, because she says to him, "That was my kill. Like that was for me to take out justice." And he was just like, whatever. And then he wraps it up in the conversation of like, maybe you should go to Italy. Maybe you should take some time off. Basically kicks her out of the family business. Oz makes Victor dig a grave, and it makes him lays on tops of the corpses, and basically tells him, he's like, they're dead because of you. Because if you had done what I asked you to do, there would only be one person dead and not these two guys. He's like, he gets so mad and so irate with him, but yet at the very end, he like humbles himself because he sees himself in this little kid. And he's like, he wants to see him do better. He wants to be able to uplift him and not constantly drag him down. So I think what he wants to be what he wishes the old crime boss was to him. Like he wants to be like that father figure to him. But he basically tells him that, if something like this happens again, that if he fails him again, he's going to have to kill him. So then we get to the very end of the episode where it wraps up, where Oz and Sophia meet, and she basically, based off of things that had happened in this episode, she decides that she wants to go out for herself, and she wants to wipe out the Falcone family hierarchy, and that she wants Oz to come and help her. And I think Oz, once again, he's that opportunistic man. He sees an opportunity to take out the Falcones and basically separate them, and once they're done, he can take out Sophia on her own, and then take out the Maroni, or use her to take out the Maronis. He basically, he's positioning himself to set her up in the end. It's my speculation, that because this is about his rise to power.
Yeah, it's interesting to see who is setting up who. I mean, she's the one that made the offer, and he's the one that accepted it. But I think they're both. We see we've always seen like Oz kind of take advantage of a situation. So if we are more along the like, we've seen him pivot, we've seen him take advantage, we've seen him like, oh, it looks like that he's helping out the Maronis, but yet he's framing them, and then he tells them about the plan, and now he's like, we see him even during the when he's trying to set up that sting operation. I forgot exactly what they were doing, but he was like working for both Falcones and the Maronis at that moment, and then he has to make a decision on who he wants to trust. And so on one side, and then when he sees an opportunity, he kills people from the other side to make them feel like he's on their side and kind of get them sent off the tracks because the Maronis not going to know what they did. And so I feel like he's always constantly switching and changing where his motives are, where his allegiances are, and ultimately he's just in it for himself, and where he can like kind of grow as a crime boss and kind of just run the whole city. And we see certain steps of him getting there, and that's really interesting to watch. And so we get to the ending of it, like we see Sophia ask him for help, and he agrees to it. I think this is another play for him to move up the ladder.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to be fun to watch this kind of unfold throughout the season. There's also, I really like, we got a little bit more of Sophia this episode. Like you said, we saw the scratches, and you noticed that she was sleeping in the closet in this confined space, probably which she's more because she was in Arkham. And there's also all of this, like we kick off with her, and like we see like she's having PTSD of all these things. There was a great line in the show that was followed by a great imagery that followed right afterward, where she was like, the guy that she was with, it was like, hey, you're safe, and she goes, I'm not safe, I'm home, which is a crazy line to say, because like, yeah, you're out of Arkham, that means you're safe, and she goes, absolutely not, this could be even more dangerous than Arkham. And then
probably safer there.
Yeah, seriously. And then it immediately goes to the Penguin logo, and then if you look at the graphic right now, you can kind of see it, but where the G is, it's kind of pointy like a nose. And so the Penguin logo was there, and then it was slowly fading out, and it was right, Oz's face was right in the G, right lined up to the nose of the point, and looks like just like the penguin there. I thought it was a really cool transition moment.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, when you go back and look at the episode, watch the title kind of fade out, and you'll see it, and it's kind of really cool. It's like they're doing, again, some great work here on the Penguin, and we're seeing him kind of move up the ranks and like maneuvering left and right, and I think it's great. We're really focusing on maybe his rise to power. That's going to be a big thing that they're going to focus on in the Batman 2.
Yeah.
And I think it was also crazy to see that like he literally put him in the grave and was like, this is what you did. You got to do better, or else this could be you next. Because like he was afraid that he was like, all right, go in the hole. I'm going to shoot you because you screwed up. And, you know, that's also terrifying because you just, at the moment, you believe it. It's like, well, I like the kid, but I guess he's not going to stick around much longer. It's like, you really don't know what Oz is going to do next. And that's part of the fun about watching these episodes week after week, as well as just admiring Colin Farrell's transformative performance, kind of laying, like, just like being unrecognizable and giving this amazing performance that is believable, like, because you really don't know what he's going to do next. And then like you see the sweet side of him when he go visits his mom. So like we're seeing so many different layers from so many different people. This is, again, quite surprising of how engaging this show is, even in episode 3. So again, I've got fun. This is going to be a very interesting watch. Another one of those shows where I feel like you have to pay attention type of shows, because moves are happening, and so you got to pay attention to what's going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. Another strong episode from the Penguin.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's all I got.
All right, so now we're gonna be diving into our spoiler review of the week, which is DreamWorks' new animated film, The Wild Robot. Like we said last week, this is the first time we're actually reviewing a DreamWorks animated film. I guess over the course of the almost 5 years we were recording this podcast, we have mentioned DreamWorks Animation in multiple projects that they've done over the past 5 years, but we never actually gave it its own episode as the title. And I think after watching this movie, we can all agree that there was a reason why we were really fascinated about this film to make it its own episode. And I think it's something special. So, Ernesto, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on The Wild Robot?
I thought it was a beautiful movie. Even though it's a departure from the book, it has the same vibes, but just like a lot of the elements within the book are different from within the movie. But I felt like the movie was able to evoke the same emotions that the book was trying to get across, but maybe even more so in a more effective manner, more so. Because there's times in this movie I was like, why am I crying? Like, why is this? why am I really feeling some kind of way? I love that how heartfelt it was. Just focusing on acceptance, just kindness as a way to build relationships. How we can adapt to our different surroundings if you just sit down and listen. I actually really like something that the book and the movie really kind of focus on is they take moments to focus on death and not very linger on them. Like during the ice storm when they're searching for the animals, there's a few times where the fox or I think it was like one or two times the fox opens the hole and just like, oh, well, not this one. And that was in a more serious tone. But then there's a moment where I think it was Catherine O'Hara as the opossum, where she's talking about her babies. She's saying 7, and then you hear this roar, and she's just like, 6 left. Like, oh, okay. Like, your baby just died.
There's a moment. So I watched this movie with Megan, and she will tell you, she was like, at the end of it, she was like, why did you take me to watch this movie? It's so sad. And I mean, it really was in certain areas. But toward the beginning of the movie, as the opossum, where she's literally just casually talking about being a mother and, being a parent. And she's like, look, I got 7 kids. I got 6 kids. And it was like, it's not even a beat miss. And I was literally like jaw dropped. I'm like, did they just do that? Did the little baby opossum just die?
Yeah.
They were just gonna brush over that, and then toward later at the end of the scene, the little baby was like, "I'm okay, I'm here, Mom," and she goes, "Great, awesome, you're back."
Yeah.
And it's still like such dark humor that I wasn't expecting. That just makes this more. Again, it was really funny. I wasn't expecting it. It made me laugh really, really well.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought it was really well done. I mean, what I thought was interesting was a deviation from the book and the movie is the whole inclusion of the Fox character. Because in the book, they're not friends, but in the movie, they're like BFFs. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He does help. Now, Roz does help the Fox in the book with the porcupine. Like that part happens. But then what's interesting, kind of a callback, we were talking about death. Like in that moment, she tells the fox, "Hey, I just killed their parents." Oh, and then the fox wants the egg, but then the fox goes off and smells they detail in the book how the fox smells the dead parents and chooses, I found something much better. And then we just go off like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna take this baby and you're gonna go eat their parents now. But it's once again, it's like that call to like that. The wild nature of the forest or the wild of nature, like the circle of life and like just things like that. But I think it's really interesting that the way that the movie and just the property introduces death to, because this is meant for little kids. This is meant but a way to introduce it to them that's not horrific, but still getting them to understand that death is a natural part of life for all wild living things.
Yeah, I just want to double check if this movie is rated G or PG, because there is a difference there. On this movie is,
I think it's PG.
It's PG.
Yeah,
okay, it's PG. All right. Yeah. So I guess they can get away with a few things, but yeah, no, I agree with you. The way that they handle death in this movie is very sensitive. Like they treat it very delicately, but also like they kind of explain it in a way. Like the book did that as well as the movie, where like we're not going to avoid it and we're not going to brush over it, but we're going to acknowledge it and move on, that this is part of nature. This is part of the natural order of things. I mean, they've even explained that throughout the movie itself. This is like to your point, you just call it the circle of life. Like, these animals hunt, these animals gather, these animals are not friends. Mm-hmm. Like they eat each other. This is just part of the wilderness that we have to get used to. One of the aspects I loved about this movie was in a weird, strange way, the believability of the robot. like the robot crash landed, and it's a very curious robot, and it's trying to understand things, trying to help the creatures. That's something in deviation from the book. The movie was really focusing on I'm a helping robot, almost very similar to like Baymax in a way, where like I am here to help you, but the robot can't help animals because the animals are just trying to kill the robot. It is called in the monster. And in an effort to try to understand and trying to help, the robot sits there for what is a lengthy amount of time. And the movie took the time, as well as the book, to showcase that if you sit still long enough, you're starting to pick up a few things. And in the sense of the book, that she was doing it out of necessity of survival, and then eventually was learning to pick up the language of the animals. In this case, she did it as I want to help these animals, but I can't understand them, so I'm going to sit here until I download every sort of instance from every animal to understand the animal language. And I think that was a very interesting way to us to transition from a realistic viewpoint of like, yeah, the animals could have just talked this whole time and no one would have batted an eye about it. But the movie took the time, and the book, to be like, the robot is processing how to understand the animal language, and here's your transition from them just being what we normally hear and now into the world of now they're talking, and kind of pushing forward through that. And I really like that because, again, you could have just been a movie where like, here's a robot in the wilderness with talking animals, and that's that. So just one of those little moments in there that's like, you're standing out to me. And then you get to the point where this robot is like continuing to try to help people, and I think that's again, like, kind of reiterating the difference between the beginning of the book and the beginning of the movie, where the book was all about like, she's just trying to learn to survive because everyone just keeps attacking her. And so in order to do that, she ends up kind of sitting still and kind of camouflaging herself within the wilderness, whereas the book, in the movie, was more trying to communicate to then further help them. I feel like helping wasn't really an angle in the book until she discovers the egg.
Yes, I 100% see that. But I think that was a way to just kind of streamline the story a little bit more. Because if they had given us that, we would have had to get at least 10 minutes of exposition of her, which I would have been fine. I think that would have been a fine addition to the movie. But that's what it would have required, is like us seeing her, because we get her being attacked they tie it together with the goose egg, because she gets attacked by the bear and then immediately falls on the egg, which in the book, obviously it happens much different. The bear has 2 kids. We don't even see the 2 kids in the movie.
Right.
Like there's none of that interaction, which was fine. So, but it was great. So Roz crashes, she gets activated, she activates her safe mode to start translating the languages. Can't find anyone who needs her help. It's constantly, so we get the montage of asking for help and everybody turning down the monster.
Yes.
So, and this part I thought was really interesting, is that for her connection to get the manufacturers to her was her having the beacon, as opposed in the book, it was a huge party that she threw for everybody in the island, and the cargo ship saw the huge fire. So I thought that was a really interesting deviation, because this homing beacon was a huge plot point in this entire which worked because they were able to tie it in to the connection with Bright Bill, her son, which was another change from the book, because the book, they had a very loving relationship, whereas in the movie, Bright Bill, they showcased that resentment that Bright Bill had towards Roz, murdering his whole family.
Yeah, and there's also, at least revolving around the beacon, there was a lot of effort where, like, okay, the robot in the movie, Roz, was like, I'm not helpful here. I must now go back to my manufacturer. Which, in the movie, she always knew that she was a robot built in a factory. Yes. And the book highlighted that as well. But in the book, she never knew her purpose. Roz never knew the purpose of why she's here. She just crash landed. In the movie, there was a recognition that she had crash landed and knew that maybe eventually she figured out that this wasn't the place she was supposed to be, and then was using the beacon as like, we're gonna, call for help. But in the process of that, the animals kept tampering with it, all leading up to when she found the egg, and then the mission had changed, which was our through line of now she has a purpose. Roz has a purpose to be there on the in the wild, so to speak, in the forest, to now raise this egg, where that was not a clear streamline in the book. She yes, there was an attack with the bear. She harmed and killed the parents. The egg came out, and now it's an obligation because the robot in the book, Roz did not want to kill another living thing after the accident that happened. Where in this case, same idea. She completed her task of saving the egg, but then the egg, obviously the gooseling formed an attachment, and then it was like, what do I do now? It's like, I got to help this thing. So like helping was a driving force on it, while also recognizing that I don't belong here, and here's the beacon that eventually becomes the MacGuffin to lead the other robots to the island when they're looking to capture her.
Yes.
Whereas oddly, I think that in the movie it was handled a little bit better, rather than a ship seeing the bonfire of her celebrating with the other animals that she's been there for a year.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
I feel
because how else would that ship know to contact Universal Dynamics?
Right. Or how would the ship even know? It's like, oh, there's a bonfire. Must be robots there.
Must be that robot ship that crashed.
Yeah, exactly. So it just felt like a very random thing, because it was at the very end of the book as well. So it just felt like we had to quickly find a way to wrap up the story, where I feel like in the movie it was done organically.
And they also gave Roz the purpose through the point of when she goes into like the graveyard where all the other robots are, like the head was able to play the trailer and show her like her history. Like it gave us like, here's where you're from, here's the people who made you. And like,
yes,
then that led into the other robot scanning her to tell her that she was defective,
right.
And that's what gave her the new transponder after, because this is the one she only had, the one that Bright Bill broke.
Right.
But
all right, we're gonna pause for just a second because I heard knocking on the door.
Okay. All right, we're back. Maybe for the last time. Yeah. Maybe not. There may be one more time, but that's all right. Because we work with each other here. That's what life is about. Matt needs AC in his house. So
I really do. It's getting hot.
I bet I can see the beads of sweat rolling on your forehead.
Yeah.
All right, but
all right. So continue on to our review.
Okay, so Roz breaks the egg. She becomes. Roz has to defend the egg from the fox. It hatches. The Gosling imprints itself onto her, and this is where he breaks it. This is where he breaks her communicator. And then next we meet Pinktail, the mother opossum, who instructs Roz to raise the Gosling with 3 primary requirements, basically giving Roz her objectives of what she needs to do. She needs to feed it, teach it to swim, and teach it to fly. It needs to fly before the annual winter migration. The fox, Pink, realizes that he can benefit from Roz and helps her to find food and construct a shelter. As the 3 cohabitate, Roz names the Gosling Brightbill. This whole setup is a complete deviation from the book, but
yeah,
I mean, I was fine with it. I would have liked to have seen. I mean, the only thing you're missing is that in the book, she builds a relationship with the beaver, and the beaver is amazed at the work ethic of the robot. And it I guess it showcases like the animals learning about the robot and what they're actually capable of. Whereas up here, we get the start of the friendship of Fink, Brightbill, and Roz, being able to cohabitate in this one shelter.
Yeah, and I also feel like that, yes, it was a deviation from the book, but again, going off of the theme, there is a objective for Roz to do. We have, what was it? Eat,
feed, swim, and fly.
Thank you. There it is. But in the book, it was kind of like there was no objective. Mm-hmm. Really, it's just like taking care of the goose, and therefore there was no objective surrounding that. It was like, okay, and today we learned, what the gooseling needs, because she went in the book. She went to go talk to another goose and be like, oh, this is what you need to do. Like that was never in the movie. And then eventually throughout the book, it was like, and now he's learning how to swim, and then now he's learning how to fly. It was like very, like not big events that were happening within the story of the book. Whereas the movie, it was given the audience like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we need to do this, and they gave those moments. It's like these are big moments, like big, impactful, emotional moments in the movie when the little gooseling was able to learn how to eat, learn how to swim, and then the big one learning how to fly.
Yeah. So then we move on to Bright Bill being grown. They're teaching, Roz and Fink are teaching him how to swim. This is where he meets the other island geese who mock him for being a runt, being awkward, and his relationship with the monster that killed his family. Since he didn't know, angry that the truth being kept from him, Bright Bill scorns Roz and leaves. She returns to the cargo ship, and this is where she learns more about her intended purpose, what we were talking about anyway. Replaces her transponder with the broken one. Longneck, the elder goose, encourages Roz not to give up on Bright Bill, and she recruits the Falcon Thunderbolt to help with flying lessons and endurance training. This is where Bright Bill masters flying. I feel like this whole scene and this whole setup, this whole montage is part of the pinnacle of the movie. And I have to tell you, the score that accompanies this movie is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But I thought, to me, this was like one of the peak of the films, like very emotion driven. Roz builds the walkway for him. They're doing all the training to stay in the air, and it's just that the scenes of persevering and of trying to push and do better, I just thought was just well executed with the music and the feels. Like it was all there.
Yeah, I mean, this was really what the movie was kind of almost building up to when, like, learning how to fly. And also, this is the moment where we see, Roz being a parent, being a concerned parental robot. And, like, that's something very new to her, and she's trying to also learn it. And we see the Bright Bill, like just because, like, the robot's his parent now, it's like he's like beep boop beep boop, and that's like just a really funny thing to see, like a goose kind of just be like a robot, and kind of just being left out of the loop. And that again makes more sense than it was in the book. It's like you're being raised by a robot. It's not normal, and like she's doing her best in this situation. And I feel like any parent can relate to these certain situations where, like, you're not in. You're kind of a dysfunctional family. You're out of the social norms, but yet you're still just trying to make it work, and you all care for one another. The fox end up being like this uncle figure to Bright Bill, and I really like this character showcase in the movie. It wasn't really like the beginning of the movie, like the fox in the book was very minimal and was shown in the movie, but then really expanded on that character and was like that force of like, and also a great character arc for the fox as well. As like, here's this like menacing, deceiving fox-like character that was willing to do anything just for, to kind of slay by and more or less like a quick buck and just like the easy way and just worrying about food. So now caring about things and kind of was being the advocate later in the movie to be like, we need to work together, where fox are just known to being, alone and by themselves. But that flight scene, learning how to fly, that was already the first point that just brings you to tears, and you're like, there's still another hour left in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, all leading up to that pinnacle where Bright Bill flies with Longneck and the migration crowd, and then Roz, she goes to the edge of the forest or the edge of the mountain to watch him fly away. And it all built up to that moment. I just felt like it was well earned and well deserved, and in their execution, I just thought it was really well done.
And again, talk about the score kind of building that moment. Like, you already felt that it was emotional, and like you would think that you were at the end of the movie. Like, this is like a moment where, like, okay, the children go fly off now, but it wasn't. We still had like another 40 minutes left on the continuing off this story, which was, again, as you discussed, more of a deviation from the book.
Yeah. So then Roz, who's upset, she's not upset, but she's just sad that Bright Bill's gone, and like she really she's completed her task. She just reactivates her transponder, but shuts it off just as the signal gets to Universal Dynamics. Then we cut to the geese who are forced to halt the migration and take shelter inside an enormous Universal Dynamics greenhouse, where they see the hostile Rico robots Longneck tells Bright Bill, "This is your chance." Gate basically telling him, "You know the robots, so you need to lead the migration out." And then this is where Longneck sacrifices himself for the good of the flock, so that everybody can get out.
Yeah, and this was kind of explains toward like the end of the book where Bright Bill comes back and kind of recaps Roz and what we've been missing, or what happened while he was away in the migration. In this case, we got to see it in in a linear fashion, and in a way, I liked again how like at this point in the book, Bright Bill was already acclimated to the group. In this case, in the movie, it was like his time to like now be part of it, and not only that, but lead it.
To prove himself.
And to prove himself, right? And Longneck sacrificed himself for Bright Bill to step up and kind of lead charge of this new flock that he was, and then eventually, kind of being part of the flock where he wasn't before.
And then we go to Roz. She's in her shelter, then finds Fink hiding from the snowstorm. And then it leads to another montage where Fink and Roz go through and try to rescue all the animals. They bring them there, and they try to get them to prey and predators to stop fighting until spring. Once Thorne agrees, the others comply. We come back months later to find the animals still following the peace, and the geese returning from their migration. But Bright Bill's a hero; he's the one who saved them. Then the dropship comes to try to recover. So this is where we kind of lead into like the final third act. We find Vantra, that's Stephanie Hugh's character, who wants to lure Roz onto the ship, saying that Universal is interested in what she changed into, because she was able to change her programming. She runs away. Then Vantra sends the army of Ricos to retrieve her, which is obviously another deviation from the book. The book talks about 3 specific robots who come after her, and you learn about each of those instances. This made for more of an epic finale for the movie, where we get the horde of them, and they take them out, but then they're set to self-destruct, so they ended up setting the entire island on fire. So I thought that I thought that was really interesting. And that
There's also toward the end, how they took out the fire was knocking down a tree, which is a beaver has been chewing at for quite some time now. So that comes in. That was foreshadowed in the beginning of the movie, and then we see the resolution to that at the end, where they were making fun of him, but now it's coming to save the day for them.
Yeah, and it was a funny moment. He's like, "Tell me that I'm awesome."
Yeah.
So they, all the animals, they fend off the Ricos. They are able to put the fire out. Bright Bill leads the island birds in attack on the dropship, because once Roz took out Vantra, she basically, one of her last things she says is that, and this is clear from, they got that from the book, when the third Rico attacks her, tells her, they're just going to keep coming. And that same line is translated in the movie. So then but this is the catalyst that tells Roz, well, I have to go then, because otherwise they're going to keep going after you guys. But what's really interesting is the reasons why they go are completely different in the book and in the movie. The book is because Roz has no arms and legs, lost it in the battle, and doesn't have a choice, so that she can be rebuilt to build her plan to come back. Whereas in the movie, none of that happens. Like, she stays fully intact, but wants to go and get repaired and become better than what she already is, so that she can eventually come back to her family. And I thought it was great. What a great way to end the movie. We end the movie with Bright Bill visiting Roz in the greenhouse, and she's fully repaired, new leg, all cleaned up. And at first it makes it seem like she doesn't remember, but then, she tells her that she does remember, because and I forgot to mention, when Vantra initially captures her, she takes her into the ship and wipes her.
Hold on 1 second.
And we're hitting pause.
Yeah,
all right. So as I was saying, in the book, Roz has to leave, because she has no arms and legs, whereas in the movie, all those things are intact. But I just thought it was interesting how the the differences between the book and the movie, I mean, they're vast. I mean, they're like there are a lot of elements that are the same, but at the same point, like they're vastly different.
I think to your point that there was a vibe, like the vibe of the book of the movie and the book were the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we went through the same big story arcs in both the book and the movie. They just went about it in two different ways. And like the emotional aspect I never got from the book. Like the like I was like in tears and toward the end of this movie. Like I was shocked at how many times I was tearing up because of how emotional this was. Like this isn't just a movie that like oh, here's a robot in the woods. It's like it's so much more than that. It's about, you know, the robot being like, it's about parenthood. It's about like caring for one another. It's about like, no, at one point that Roz never at least toward the until the end, when they were threatening for Roz to leave because the other robots wanted her, Roz never resorted to violence when it came to the other animals. The animals did, and they wanted to just destroy her. But she always went there with kindness and was always in there willing to help, so much so that it came back to benefit her at multiple points in the movie, as well as the book. I feel like more so in the book because we got to see her like interact with the beaver, and then it's like, oh, if you want a garden for your new home to help with Brightbill, you got to talk to the deer. And so then like, all right, the deer will help you out if you do a favor. And it's like this combination of like, oh, you're not a monster. You're just, now you're just slowly being part of the community. And the animals responded to that when she decided to take care of Brightbill. Mm-hmm. So now you have, we have toward the end of the movie where we're getting to the point where I think the turning point for all of the animals was that it was like a really, really bad winter, and she's able to save all the animals with the fox, and then they had to come to an agreement. Now the robot was already like, Roz was already like dying. It's like she spent all the last couple of days trying to save all these animals, and now they're in one place and it's just chaos happening. Yeah, the animals want to eat other animals, and it's like, hey, if this is gonna work and we got to survive, and you want to be here for spring, we got to be here together. And so this is going to be a safe space while we hunker down for the winter. And then they all agreed upon it, and it was another beautiful tear-jerky moment. The way that the speech was dealt, the way that the scene kind of played out, you're just like, yep, they're gonna work together to survive. And it's great. And then, Brightbill eventually comes into the story again, and they're like, no, they just get back together, don't leave again. And then it was another emotional moment where it's like, now I have to leave. Now I have to be the one to leave because it's not safe for you guys. And it's all part of keeping this family together. And I was worried, like, if the Roz was going to recognize Brightbill again, or if it was going to be like, I don't know how Brightbill even got to Roz toward the end of the movie, but I don't care at this point. It's meant for children. We're here for happy endings. Roz somehow remembered everything, because they did take Roz, and like they had that moment where like Roz was already shut down, but for the power of love, I guess, they were able to still hold that connection, because it's not about, memories are in the heart. It's not in the brain. I think that's part of the messaging there. And It's such a sweet movie. And also, we haven't even talked about the animation.
Oh, yeah.
This movie looks gorgeous.
That's the best. To me, regardless of everything, the cherry on top is just the animation, the hand painted they did, which they draw inspiration from the Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the watercolor paintings of it all, like the stark, like the differences between like what the robot looked like, what some of the other animals looked like, and then what the world, like the woods looked like. It felt so different, and it felt like the robot and the other animals were able to pop more when like the wilderness does not match their animation, and it just felt like it was able to be more immersive into that. And like this whole movie coming together, it's just such a beautiful movie. Like it was getting high praise before it came out, and I really wasn't expecting this to come out of Pixar. Honestly, not since How to Train Your Dragon, the original, have I felt like, wow, all right, sorry, DreamWorks. I said Pixar. I wasn't expecting this type of animation to come out of DreamWorks, and we got a little bit of it coming from Puss in Boots and the Last Wish, where they were like experimenting a little bit. But I feel like Chris Sanders really took his time with the story, really took his time with the, working with the animators, and really working on like directing a film that is so genuine, so heartfelt, filled with so many different messages, and funny. The movie was funny too. The fact that little Bright Bill was helping him build the lodge was hilarious. He's like, I want to help. He's like, no, you're not efficient enough. And he's like, come on, let me do it. And then you can see that like
The frustration.
The frustration in the robot trying to give like little twigs that adding to the house. It's so genuine. It's so funny. This movie was a big surprise for me. As far as my final thoughts, it's a beautiful film. I have no reason not to give it a 5 out of 5 for me.
Same here. The animation is gorgeous. It deserves to be a 5 out of 5. The only other thing I want to talk about is some of the financial. I mean, it had a great opening weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah, open to $35 million at the time of this recording, $38 million domestically, $18 million internationally, with a grand total of $56.2 million at a budget of $78 million. And this is only in its first week, so I feel like maybe with better positive word of mouth, it wasn't an overnight success, but I think we are building toward at least making its budget and hopefully profitability, because, aside from Transformers 1, not a lot of kids movies out there. It's not going to be for quite some time, so maybe certain families can go out and support this movie, because it's something beautiful.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
But yeah, I think, surprisingly, I didn't think that this movie was going to, beat my expectations of Inside Out 2. I personally feel like this is a better movie than Inside Out 2. I think this is the best animated movie of the year, and I think it deserves the Oscar for that as well.
I think they both deserve the Oscar nomination. I think it's going to be very competitive for Best Animated Feature next year.
Yes, I think a lot of people thought that Inside Out 2 was a shoo-in, but then DreamWorks comes out and was like, hey, man, we got something special. And I think they're going to really be pushing this movie for next year's Oscars, and I will too. I was not expecting to be this emotional coming out of a movie about a robot in the wilderness.
Yeah, same here.
And I think the book, like you said, it fits the vibe of it. And I don't know, are you interested in reading the other two books?
I actually am. I don't know.
Oh, you are?
The story's simplistic enough, but it's able to talk about deep things in such a simplistic manner that I think it's fantastic.
Do you think they can, do multiple? Do you think they can make a sequel out
Oh,
of this?
absolutely. I think the way that they ended the movie very open-ended, where like it caps off it, but it still leaves room open for another story to take place.
Yeah, I agree. But honestly, if this is the only movie we get, I'm okay with it too.
Yeah,
it's perfectly fine the way it is. I would definitely be rewatching this movie again. And also, lastly, Lupita Nyong'o voice acting the robot, fantastic. Yeah. As far as first time she's voice acting, and it was great.
Oh, it was so good.
It
was so good.
But there you go. That's our spoiler review on The Wild Robot. One of the few movies that we've been given a 5 out of 5 stars this year, and it 100% deserves it. Ernesto, tell our listeners what they can look forward to next week.
Oh, next week we are reviewing Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. This is a movie that he self-funded, budget of over $100 million. So yeah, I think you've already seen it, and you've given me like a brief snippet. So I'm excited for the experience to go watch this film.
I will say this. Since I've already seen the movie, I will say this about it. For those who have listened to our Kinds of Kindness review, it's going to be very similar to that on my end. If you don't know what my review on Kinds of Kindness are, then go back to listen to that episode, and you get you get a tease of what we're going into. So yes, this will be a very interesting conversation, and if all our ducks land in a row here, we will be having guests on the show, and this will be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, this has been a while since Francis Ford Coppola even came out with a movie, so the fact that he's been spending multiple years with this, and see what he comes out with.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's all the show we have for you guys this week. As always, you can follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Threads and Instagram page at Box Office_Bingers. The fun doesn't stop here. You can go to our social media channels, and we have so much more to give you guys all over there. So be sure to give any one of those a follow. We really do appreciate it. And that's it. That's all the show we have for you guys this week. Come back next week. Come back next week for more movie fun you're not going to regret. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Ben Ernesto Santos. See ya.